Iran's foreign minister published an article in the New York Times today entitled Saudi Arabia's Reckless Extremism, in which he accused some in Riyadh of seeking to drag the entire region into confrontation. And the Homburg diplomatic correspondent for the News Today reports.
Following the nuclear deal signed last July between world powers and Iran, Iranian Foreign Minister Jaffa Zarif has been widely received as a diplomatic rock star. His Western education, meticulous appearance, and eloquent English has made him an ideal symbol for a desired rapprochement with Tehran. Accordingly, amid the intensifying row between Iran and Saudi Arabia, the sleek foreign minister was offered space in the New York Times' prestigious op-ed section. Zarif used it to accuse Riyadh of spreading Iranophobia in the wake of the nuclear agreement, before condemning the recent execution of 47 people in Saudi Arabia, including the prominent Shiite figure Nimr al-Nimr, which triggered a diplomatic spat between Tehran and the kingdom. Saudi Arabia seems to fear that the removal of the smokescreen of the nuclear issue will expose the real global threat, its active sponsorship of violent extremism. The barbarism is clear. At home, state executions sever heads with swords. Abroad, masked men sever heads with knives. While state-sanctioned executions are common in Saudi Arabia, according to Amnesty International, the amount of executions in Iran is far higher, even though the Iranian regime allegedly goes to great lengths to minimize this fact. While Zarif mentioned the ongoing war in Yemen, accusing Riyadh of seeking regional instability, left unmentioned is that Tehran supports the Shiite Houthis, which the Saudi-led coalition is fighting. Tehran also created and finances Lebanon's Hezbollah, which is actively engaged in the fighting in Syria. Zarif even referenced 9/11, specifically that many of the hijackers were Saudi, perhaps to gain American sympathy. On a positive note, Zarif's call for regional stability through dialogue as well as sectarian tolerance are important statements. But even so, one wonders whether these stated views are shared by the more hardline elements in the Iranian leadership.
And with me right now is Mayor Javed Anfar, Iranian politics expert. Good evening.
Thank you very much.
I saw your smile when you saw this report. We will talk about the smile. Ali Waqt, senior Middle East analyst for I-24 News. Good evening. Okay, let's talk about your smile. Let's talk about the words that Iran is using against Saudi Arabia. And really, I'm laughing because really, are you kidding me?
Yes. Look, almost definitely when Zarif was writing that op-ed, or whoever was writing that op-ed, he was more worried about the repercussions and the reaction to that op-ed in Iran, even though the op-ed was in English in New York Times, than in the United States. You know, yes, Iran does have a higher execution rate than Saudi Arabia, for sure. But does that really bother him what you and I are going to say, or what the American Amnesty says? No, what bothers him is what the right-wingers are going to say in Iran, the conservatives. Because again, I have to come back to this, we have the parliamentary elections and the Assembly of Expert elections in Iran to come up. But there's also, but it does have a foreign also audience here. In America, now that Iran and America reached a deal against the wishes of Saudi Arabia and Israel, he thinks that now he's got basically an audience he can play. And what the audience is American Democrats and liberals. And what do they care about? They care about human rights. And this is a card that he's playing in order to get them. What else is he going to say?
You know, for me, it's like people are laughing in our faces if it's the Iranians or the Saudi Arabia are looking at us and telling us, oh, he is unhumane. He is acting as an extremist. He is the one who's violating human rights. No, they are not. Both countries really reach to a top with violating human rights. I don't want even to start imagining. If it's in Iran, people are being massacred and killed because they want to live freely. And if it's in Saudi Arabia, women are not allowed to drive or any other punishment, let's say, methods that I don't want to mention here.
Yeah, absolutely, Lucy. And I don't think they are giving too much importance to what the West, how the West will react to some operations. We are seeing that the Saudis are using some very specific weapons in Yemen, and they are not giving any attention to what the UN, to what the Secretary General is saying, to what some human rights organizations. We are focusing on what is happening. Yesterday we talked about Mada in Syria, but the Saudis are also using tough weapons in Yemen, and they are targeting some hospitals, they are targeting some civilians, and I do agree with you that there is no really big difference between the Saudis and between the Iranians. When you see on the social media a Saudi woman that was accused for prostitution is being beheaded in the middle of the street when the audience is watching, it's not too much difference than what the Iranians are doing.
You know, I want to talk about one of the sentences that were mentioned in this article, and it's the fact that Saudi Arabia is deteriorating the region to an entire war, maybe a region that is already deteriorated in the situation that it's in. And I'm asking myself, maybe an article or this article or all the situation that we're seeing between Iran and Saudi Arabia can deteriorate to a really...
No, it can't. The Iranians don't want it, the Saudis don't want it. Actually, you know, if Zarif, if he had maybe a better speechwriter, or if his audience was purely American and he didn't want to leave himself open now to all these reactions, now people could say, how can you talk about human rights? He could have talked about Iran's scientific record. He could have talked about that Iran is now one of the leading countries after Israel in the region in scientific research, in nanotechnology, in biology, Iran's got many of its own industries. He could have talked about that, but it's so important to go for the jugular of the Saudis. He wants the Americans basically to say that we no longer want to work with the Saudis, we want to work with Iran.
What are the chances that the Americans knew that this article is going to be published and they gave some kind of a, okay, let it be published?
I'm glad that they let it publish. What's wrong with that? Okay, if Mr. Zarif wants to come and say these things, it's an open press. And now let's see what the Saudis are going to say in response. I'm looking forward to that. But this sounds like a competition between the pot and the kettle, and and each one accusing the other of being a specific color.
Yes, Mayor Javed Anfar, thank you very much. Ali, you're staying with me.